All right, welcome into another Gold Jacket Thursday. Such an honor to talk to this man. He was a third-round pick out of Nebraska, then spent 14 years in the trenches, all with the Kansas City Chiefs from 93 to 06. He became one of the best offensive guards in pro football history, 12 straight Pro Bowls. In fact, he started 223 games of the 224 he played, never missed a game. Class of 2015 into Canton, we welcome in Will Shields. Will, welcome.
Thank you. How's everything going, man?
We're doing great down here in Columbus. Thrilled to have you aboard. Let's walk down memory lane a little bit and your years at Nebraska under Tom Osborne. And it's funny because, I mean, you had some very, very good years. And the one thing I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, were you the one that they called the Fumblerooski for versus Colorado?
Yes, sir.
Was that your last year?
No, 92. Yeah. So it was close to my last year.
I mean, of all the plays, so talk to me about that. Did you run it in practice? Had you run it previously? You knew it was coming right then? What was going through your mind? Listen, you're going up against a massive rival. You're finally trying to take them down, and they call this Fumblerooski for you. What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, you're in that aha moment, like, what? Are you kidding me? We've been practicing this for weeks, and you're actually going to call it in a game. And we're like, okay, it's a night game, and we're having a good game. And so I was like, okay, go ahead, give me a chance to pick up the ball and run with it. And, of course, it wasn't perfect, but got an opportunity to pick it up and rumble for about 15, which was pretty cool. Anytime you get an opportunity to touch the ball as a big guy, it's exciting, it's cool. It's something that will not happen that many times unless it's a true fumble across the board. But, when he called it, the eyes got really big, and I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to try to run this play. It was a blast.
Yeah, of all the great things you did. And I loved those rivalries, and I'm wondering in your mind, are you sad about that? Is it upsetting that some of these rivalries have gone away? Nebraska, Colorado, Nebraska, Oklahoma. I think Kansas was decent around your time. And they are again. Is it upsetting to you? I know you're part of that old Big 8 and way back when, but now with all the realignment, Nebraska being in the Big 10, how does that hit you?
Yeah, it changes everything. I mean, you think about all the things that you used to build up, and, the rivalries of playing the teams in your area to be able to say, hey, there's recruiting grounds, also means that you got a chance to play against a lot of the kids that you grew up with, because they all went to school somewhere there in the Big 8 at that point. So you got to visit and play against teammates, which was even more of the rivalry piece of building it in. But you do miss those times where you did have the big rivalry games back and forth of where you knew you were going to face these teams so many times, within your career. And that gave you the opportunity to try to win and be able to go home with bragging rights. With me being a kid from Oklahoma, getting a chance to go home and go, we did play you guys, and we did take you out and beat you up a little bit. Those kind of things always was a lot of fun.
How rewarding was it when you finally got the Buffaloes? Like that was a challenge during your time, wasn't it, to beat them?
Oh, it was really tough. They had their shared national championship when I was there, and we were always close. We always had that 9-2 season or 9-3 or 8-3 season, right at the cusp of being, within the top 25 or top 10. We just had the teams that we lost to ended up being national championships or things of that nature. But it was a good problem to have, that the teams you were facing were the top of the top, and you got an opportunity to play them week in and week out.
Talking with the 12-time Pro Bowler Will Shields, the guard out of the Kansas City Chiefs, all those great years. He's back in Canton and doing some great things this weekend in football heaven. So Marty Schottenheimer had it cooking your first handful of years. Big wins, some heartbreaking playoff losses, and then he resigns under great emotional strain. How did that time affect you?
It was a tough time when you start having a coach that drafts you and bring you in and takes you under his wing and give you the opportunity to play at the next level. When he retires and moves on to do other things. Actually, he didn't he coach in San Diego a couple of years after that? And we ended up having Gunther Cunningham for a year, and then they went to Vermeil after that, and then from Vermeil to Herm. So we had a couple of different changes at that point and trying to figure out where we were trying to go and trying to go out to actually, it was more or less the playoffs / Super Bowl wins. And it's interesting when you have different coaches that's been there and fight their way to get there and have been there before, and they sort of give you a roadmap. And that was really cool, the interesting things. But Marty is a great dude. He's, he had that tough mentality, and he distilled that into us. And that's how we played when he was there. And, he was a great leader.
What do you believe the impact of Dick Vermeil was?
Coach Vermeil had his philosophy was similar to Marty's, but it was sort of flipped. He was an offensive-minded guy that believed you could go ahead and score 30, 40 points and win. On the other hand, where, Marty was more defensive-oriented. So I had a blast playing for both. And I think, some of the real fun about having Coach Vermeil is the way that he cultivated his team, and he cultivated around him and made it more of a family atmosphere. And, he wanted you to be around the stadium as long as you wanted to, made it more of a home away from home for those guys that, hadn't set up shop in Kansas City. And I think that's what made it unique for the different styles, where one was like, go home, get out of here, do this. And he's one of those guys that were like, hey, man, you can stay till midnight if you want to. Just, if you're studying a little film, if you get a little work in while you're doing it, that would be great. But he believed in working a long time, long hours, and believed putting it in on the field. Both coaches were the same way, 2.5, 3 hour long practices, a lot of hitting, getting your body ready. We call it tenderizing the muscles so that you get used to a long season. And they were both that way. It's just one believed in more offensive oriented and the other one believed in defense, which, made it interesting to be able to say I've played for coaches that are on both sides of the spectrum, and they both did great things.
Visiting with the former 3-time first-team All-Pro, 2000s All-Decade team. If my numbers are correct, you started actually 231 straight games, if I include the playoffs, at the right guard position. You never missed a game. What do you attribute your durability to, and how close were you at times to missing a game?
Well, some of that's luck. Some of that's being mentally unstable. Being that guy that basically I wanted to be accountable. I wanted to be there for my guys. I wanted to be a part of the group. I love the game, and I think that's one thing that made it more important for me to love the game and be around the guys. And there was some weeks that, I'm looking at it going, yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it this week. And shoot, at that point, you have a teammate that, pulls you along and goes, no, we need you. It's time to go. I'd rather have you next to me halfway than to have you, even if you're not 100%. And, that made it even more important, because your teammates valued what you were trying to do and wanted you on the field with them. So there were some weeks that you're like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it. And what was really cool is that certain weeks, some of it was miracle works through chiropractic care and the training staff and everything else that gets you back on the field. And then, a couple of weeks is more or less, man, the ankle is not as bad as you thought it was going to be. You can hobble your way through the game or what have you. And that's what made it so cool, is that there was other aspects of it that sort of, pushed you through on those weeks that you didn't think that you were going to make it.
Was there a specific injury, like the toughest one you felt you had to play through?
I had one that I had an ankle that was pretty bad, and I had to play through it. That was pretty tough. But I actually had things, I don't know if it was called drop hip, where I'd start to warm up, and my muscles would tighten up on my right side, and my leg would go numb. It's like I couldn't move it. So I was going out for pre-practice Wednesday and Thursday, and I couldn't go because I'd go out and start running and warming up, and it would just lock up on me. So then I ended up getting carted off and going to get treatment and try to figure out what's next. And then the day before, actually it was on a Friday, I go to the chiropractor, and he goes, hey, man, I'm going to reset your nervous system. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, take a laser, put it behind your head, and next thing you know, I can feel the muscles on the right side of my right side of my body relax. And I was like, okay, I think this is working. So it's really using a combination of different people, places, and things that sort of kept you pushing back and getting you on the field. But that was really a game I didn't think I was going to make it. We were playing Atlanta, and I didn't think I was going to make it because, after you start warming up, the body just shut down on you, that whole right side.
Wow. That's incredible and incredibly impressive. All right, we are talking with Will Shields. He is the Pro Football Hall of Famer in Canton this weekend. You get to Kansas City, and there's, I believe, 37-year-old Joe Montana still doing it. Tell me about your conversations as a very young player with a legendary quarterback that you will be blocking for. How much pressure did you feel? What was your relationship with him, and what do you remember?
Well, Joe he's such a cool and relaxing dude, man. He never created new stress for you when he walked in the huddle. But it was like week one, you go in and you don't have an opportunity. You're playing with the 2s and 3s, and you're watching them do things. And then he's like, oh, well, this guy is sort of down this week, Will. Can you go in and take some reps? And he's changing plays and doing all kinds of stuff. And the coaches have to stop practice, and they go, hey, Joe, they're not ready for that yet. They don't know what you're talking about. we were like, yeah, we were trying to figure out what he was calling and what he was changing to and all of that. But it's really cool to be around a person that can see things that you can't see, and then you start to learn what they're looking for. And he's so, between him and Marcus, those two guys took me under their wings and showed me what it was like to be a pro. Marcus would actually come into the meeting rooms with me and go through plays, and we would talk about, hey, what can you do with this guy? Hey, what can you do with that guy? How much film work you really need to do, and how do you need to study guys, and to a point where you write out books of different information on different people. And so it was really a great learning curve to have those two guys being part of the team, because they taught you what it was like to be a pro. And they had already won Super Bowls before. They had already been to where you were trying to get to.
Do you remember it? Was Joe Montana kind of a, lack of a better word, kind of a jerk in the huddle, or was he as cool as we think he was? Did he get on you guys a lot verbally? No.
Joe did not get on us at all. He was, he's one of those guys that when he walked in the huddle and he said these words, I'm going to need a little time, you knew something was going to happen. He saw something that we didn't see. And he was never a guy to yell and scream at anyone about, routes or this, that, and the other. He was a guy in the huddle, man. He was truly a teammate. And it was really cool because sometimes you show up places and he would be in those places, like sitting in the corner, getting some food or whatever. And it was like, dang, is that Joe over in the corner? He's hiding under a hat. And he's like, dude, come over here and be quiet, sit down.
That's a good story.
So he would just include you, man. He was just that guy that would do anything for the team and try, and he just loved to win, which is one of the coolest things to be around.
I think a name that some young people would not know, and maybe that they should know, is Priest Holmes. And a lot of people, and I've watched a lot of football my whole life, and you can go through running backs, and you can name Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson. You can go through all of them, Jim Brown. You go through all these great running backs, and I think that Priest Holmes is just a name that should be mentioned more. What was it like to block for him? And do you feel like he is maybe the most underrated guy around?
I think he's one of those guys that, that most people don't know what he did within the years he had to play. With a guy that had two major injuries, one at the beginning of his career, which, was the Super Bowl year for the Baltimore Ravens, that vaulted Lewis into being the running back. And then he came to us after that and basically, had the chip on his shoulder and wanted to prove that, hey, I am a great running back. And we didn't even know what we had until, the Washington game. And then we were like, wow, we got this guy. He's unreal. And he had a motor and a passion for the game. And, dude, he went 100% even in practice, which was one of those things that was phenomenal to watch. And, yeah, he is definitely one of those guys that should be in the breath of, those famous running backs that we all know of.
That 3-year run, 01, 02, 03, it was about as dominant as any 3-year run that ever happened in history of the NFL. You're back in pro football heaven. You are a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Tell me a little bit about what you're looking forward to this weekend, being back up in Canton. And was your career everything you dreamed that it would be or more?
Well, it's good to be here back in Canton. I love it. It's a great place to be. We've already started with our feet on the ground running. We just did a football camp with those offensive linemen. I had about 30 guys. Got a chance to bring the coaches out and talk about, blocking schemes and, get back dirty again, get your hand in the sand, as we call it, and show different guys different techniques that you might know, and then learn things from them of what they're doing today. And really just to be a part of the community is always important. So we'll make appearances around, especially being here back in this time of the year. Juneteenth is just rolling the day. So to build out those things are really cool. And then, as we move forward at the end of this year, we get to do our first honors award for offensive lineman of the year.
That's right.
So that's going to be really cool. I'm excited to be a part of that committee and to be able to say, hey, man, our big guys are finally getting a little love in the NFL.
Well deserved, my man. One final thing. You got confidence that your alma mater can get back to being what they were when you were there? Matt Rule's a couple years in now, won a bowl game, got over 500. I know that's not much, but they hadn't been over 500 in many years. What's your confidence in Nebraska right now, and how hard it is to win there?
I hope that they get beyond what we did when I was there, because all the kids I beat up on all won national championships. So once I left, it seemed like, they won like 2 or 3 in a row or 4 back then. And I was like, yeah, I remember beating up on him and beating up on him and beating up. But it's cool to see, and you'd just like to be, get the team and group back to a point to where they're fighting in the top 25 and getting opportunities to go to major bowl games. And, sooner or later, of course, that national championship piece would be great. It's going to be hard to do, but get them back on the winning track to where they're having consecutive winning seasons and getting the mojo back of what it was like to be a part of the Husker Nation.
We'll soak it up this weekend. So glad you're back in Canton. We'll send the fans to you, and they won't be able to miss you. You'll be the guy in the gold jacket forever.
Well, thanks, man.
Thanks, my man.
I appreciate it. You have a great one.